Hello, everybody. I'm back. So here we go. I am joined by a variety of guests today. They'll all be popping in and out. I just figured that, with the 4th of July weekend, I wasn't going to do a Sunday stream. I figured I would just catch up with everybody and say hello and just hang out for a bit and, let everyone know that I'm back and we're going to be doing regular content again. And so I've got a variety of people with me. And so for right now, I have Mr. Patriarch, who is wonderful enough to spend some of his time with me today to just hang out and talk with you all. So, Mr. Patriarch, how are you doing?
We're doing good, man. And shit, thanks for reminding me it's the 4th of July. They don't do that down here in Africa. So I forgot all about it until you just mentioned.
Well,
like,
it was
July 3rd.
Yeah, it's July 3rd. Wasn't yesterday Canada Day or something like
Yeah.
that? I know that
Yeah.
Settlers Lament had a Dominion Day stream with Endeavor, and it was pretty good to watch. But yeah, it was funny because my dad asked me, he's like, "Are you going to do one of your Sunday shows?" I was like, "No, it's the 4th of July. I'm not going to do anything this weekend. Really, I'm going to hang out, but that's about it." And he's like, "Oh yeah, right." And I just. It was funny. You came up in conversation the other day. I don't know how. I was just talking about the people that I hang out with or who I know in my circles. And I was just like, yeah, I know this guy from Alaska who met his wife online and now he moved to South Africa of all places. It's like, he's a ballsy guy.
Yeah. I always get that question. Like, they're like, why didn't you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to marry an African and then move to America, not the opposite. But I guess I'm doing it wrong.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, so I think you're fine.
Yeah, I know precisely. And in our, I'm not going to go into too much details, but in our particular situation, it's not as bad as people think. There's like particularly South Africa. South Africa's got this reputation as like everyone's hunting down whitey everywhere, and it's really not the case. At least in the province I live in, things are. You got crime to worry about, but you're no more likely to be singled out for being Caucasian than anybody else. And the way I see it, I got a passport, my son's got a passport, and if we need to leave, like we could leave tomorrow. So, it wouldn't be too bad.
So do you have does your son have dual citizenship, or is that too personal to ask?
No, he does.
Cool.
It's not nothing too personal there, but he's got birthright citizenship in South Africa, and because I'm an American, I was able to get that for him as well. So if your parent is first generation American, and they've lived in the United States for X amount of time, which I have, obviously, then your progeny is eligible for U.S. citizenship. And my wife's got She's got a visitor's visa, which is good for 10 years, but that just basically means she could come in for like 3 months at a time and whatnot. But yeah, so if we needed to leave, we could get out of here pretty quick. But so I'm not too worried about it, basically.
But yeah, so man, it has been a fun couple of weeks. We're becoming an international cabal, says General Guy in chat. And yes, it's pretty much true. We've got just about everyone in our little sort of reactionary circle is from all over the place, whether it's the middle of nowhere, United States, South Africa, Wales, the UK.
Yeah, I see Doomgoy in the chat. Yeah, speaking of international cabals, yeah, I just saw him the other day on one of my videos, and I keep noticing whenever I do a stream, a lot of the same names seem to keep popping up. So yeah, it is kind of like this little ecosystem we've built for ourselves. So it's pretty interesting. And yeah, as you said, all over the world, predominantly it seems to be mostly the US and UK, but you'll also have like weird little outposts in Canada or South Africa or wherever. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, it's kind of cool when you think about just the fact of who people are subscribed to and all that jazz. Because I follow Black Pigeon Speaks, and I know that he is an American expat living in Japan. And
is he American? He sounds Canadian to me.
I believe I believe he's an American, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I know that I know he's somewhere from the West who's now an expat living in Japan.
No, definitely North American for sure. But
oh yeah,
when I hear him speak, the boot comes out a little bit when I hear him. So I'm like, not so sure. I don't know if anyone knows, send him an email. Like find out.
Steve says he's Canadian.
Ah, okay.
Well, that answers that question.
My ear trained for foreign exotic accents. I guess I don't know.
Maybe the fact that you lived in Alaska, you just know a bunch of Canadians.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
I live in the middle of nowhere, North Texas. I couldn't tell you what a Canadian accent sounds like. My most closest encounter with Canadians is pretty much dealing with Settler's Lament and listening to his streams.
Yeah, no, definitely. And he's not exactly doesn't have a typical Canadian accent, but you do hear a little bit of it with I just listen for a boot, and that always sort of tips me off. I don't know, it's a strange way of speaking, but Canadians always reminded me of just slightly weird Americans. I don't know. There's just something.
Don't let them hear you say that.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm just talking about in terms of personality, basically. But yeah, no. Alaska is basically just the more based version of Canada. So I mean, why would you live in Canada? If you had the choice, and you could pick between Alaska. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know. I haven't had the pleasure of visiting Alaska. It's on my list of things to do in life.
Yeah, you'll like it. I recommend everyone who gets a chance go see it. You won't regret it. It's a real special place. But also, I've noticed I believe. Hold on, let me double check. I don't want to be shooting off the mouth here. Okay, yes, it's 215. And I go to my channel, 215. We are exactly tied for subscribers.
Oh, would you look at that? I'm glad that you caught up.
So we're exactly. I needed to, man. But yeah, we're the 2 Thou Wow club.
All right. So, well, I'm happy that we're there.
So for together, we're 4 Thou Wow.
Well, that's fine. I'm fine with together being 4,000. I'm good with that.
Hopefully, this time next year it'll be 8 Thou Wow. That'll be good.
That would be great.
Yeah. We gotta figure out Aaron's crazy guerrilla marketing techniques or whatever he does to grow his channel. I don't know, man.
I don't know, because today he was celebrating the whole 9,000 followers on Twitter thing, and I couldn't help but chuckle because someone in the replies was like, "So you're a Twitter account with a YouTube channel, not the other way around."
Yeah, no, I think that actually might be a big part of it because he takes Twitter far more seriously than I do in terms of using the platform. My Twitter just basically exists to talk to other creators and plug my stuff essentially.
Will H says that we should use the Mystery Grove marketing tactics.
Use Mystery Grove marketing tactics. Okay. Oh, it appears a wild semiagog has appeared.
Hello, gentlemen. Yes, the Mystery Grove tactics work well. Just threaten, debilitating injury if books are not purchased.
Well, that, and you make your own memes. There's semiagog, and those work wonderfully.
I try. I'm just a poor laborer on the periphery, on the margins of existence. Congratulations on being back, Prudentialist, and here's my signal of support for your excellent channel. And hello, Mr. Patriarch, another person with an excellent up and coming channel.
Well met, Semiagog. Well met.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to be back. I've spent the last couple of weeks just sort of taking it easy. Things have to get back to quote unquote normal starting after the holiday weekend. So on Tuesday, because I start my new job. So I'm like, well, I might as well get back to work on the channel as well and get things started and back up again. So things are moving in a really good direction.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to be winning for a change.
Oh yeah.
Winning,
and it was
winning.
I know. We thought we would never get tired of it, but here we are. But no, it's certainly uplifting in the midst of everything that's sort of been going on, because I've sort of been away from the news, and the only thing I've been really listening to has been unpopular opinions in the cigar streams. So it's just what's been going on in the world, and let's find out.
Yeah, it's kind of like pulling back a bandage and exposing the gangrene when you look, but yeah, not for the faint of heart.
Oh no. It's what have I missed for the last couple of weeks? And then it's and everyone, it's just been a fun time catching up on the news. Hey, David, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. What's up, guys? How you doing?
Doing good, man. I just I saw your latest video and I just downloaded it before this. I was like, oh, the Dave Rubin grift. That seems interesting. So I just
Thanks.
downloaded it right now. I'm going to be watching it later tonight once I get alone time for data. You know,
I'm glad.
baby, no one else is bothering me.
Yeah, it's good. I took some time on it, and it's been a while since I uploaded though, so I gotta work.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you've been recently you've recently moved and you got a job, right?
So yeah, I'm busy. I'm busy.
Well, good. It's always
we're all
it's
busy.
always good to be busy.
Yeah.
How about you, Semigog? You busy?
Being a reprobate and useless. Yeah. My industry or field or whatever was utterly gutted and destroyed by the recent global unpleasantness. And so, yeah, I'm going to be forced to embrace like trying to write. So I'm moving along with that. I'm trying to finish this translation of mine. And then as soon as I have that done, I've got a fiction and a nonfiction book in the works, hopefully. But, I'm going to try to sell the translation first. We'll see.
Do you mind sharing what you're working on there?
Oh yeah, I've told some people, and I forget that not everyone's psychic. Yeah, it's a translation of an Ottoman text written by a Circassian Mamluk in Egyptian service. It was published in the 1890s, and it was worked on, I guess, from the 1860s to the 1890s. It's in Ottoman, and it's a tiny little book, but I'm not particularly skilled at translating Ottoman. Anyway, it's about marks and signs, the clan signs, the kind of marks that went on boundary stones or on thresholds of doors or on arms and equipment. And it's a little snapshot of how these people used non-linguistic marks to organize their behavior, to show property ownership, for military organization, to show that they had all agreed to contracts, or even when you came and stayed at someone's home, you would cut your mark into the guest room door next to all the other guest room marks. So it was almost like a guest register. Anyway, these people who didn't have a great deal of it didn't have widespread literacy, except for the ones who'd been to the religious schools. They used these marks and signs to organize their behavior. And the research for it was started just before the end of the Russian conquest of the Caucasus, or the Western Caucasus, in 1864. So it's like this little window to a system of organizing groups of people and society in various ways without writing proper, so to speak. And that tradition had probably been running at least for 2,000 or 3,000 years across the steppes. So to me, it's really interesting to say you have a bunch of people, they're not particularly literate, and they use these marks and signs to organize their behavior and help to prop up society, property ownership, and the rest, like I talked about. And you got all these different languages spoken and a bunch of fairly illiterate people, but they organize themselves with marks and signs. And I'm like, wow, where have we seen that? With increasingly illiterate populations, populations jammed up on each other, and they're increasingly not much good in any way with texts, but they organize themselves based around brands and logos. So it's got historical interest and contemporary interest. That was a long answer, but it's my baby project, I
think it's really fascinating, this whole codification through pictographic language. That I'm looking forward now to this translation. That sounds really, really interesting.
So it's
about half page left.
Oh, nice. I was just gonna say, so it's a book basically about translating old school emojis.
Well, it would bear on emojis too. Yeah, it's mainly just how human beings use marks the same way that animals do to organize themselves in space. And so it also, I'm hoping my next work is going to be based on some of the stuff that comes from this. And it's the idea that if you can tie how we organize ourselves with what we call writing back to something past what we think of as being writing proper, strictly speaking, something designed to capture words. If we expand the definition of writing to cover what could be considered territorial marks, resource marks, environmental marks, clan and property signs, then what you've done, or what I hope to do, is to connect writing itself back to animal environmental marks. And then you're on a foundation where you can connect writing with its civilizational value with something that all animals do. And if you do that, then suddenly you've connected writing to biology rather than assuming that it's something, sui generis that, is entirely unique to man. And I hope at some point that this will be a useful angle of attack to destroy all the leftist linguistic tabula rasa, the whole idea that writing is all arbitrary so we can rename everything. I'm hoping to plant a stake saying, wait a minute, none of this is arbitrary. It goes back to animal behavior. It has to do with orientation in our environment. These marks matter. So yeah, I'm getting way off in the weeds here, but the basic idea is that if you can show that these marks and signs across human societies don't have to be linguistic, and that they do relate to animals pissing on trees on the borders of their territory or marking a food cache, then suddenly human writing is something not, anthropocentric and separate from all the rest of creation. And you can tie the need for it to be reliable to survival value, because an animal that leaves these marks on its borders, it uses them to navigate, to make decisions about when to attack, what to defend, whether its nesting site is attacked. And I'm hopeful that I can use that to go straight for the throat of all the leftists who say it's all tabula rasa. It doesn't matter what we can rename it to reshape behavior. It has no intrinsic value for orientation. We just recreate the definitions and the words. And I'll be like, no, man, there's, billions of years of animal life on Earth that shows that we need these marks to organize our behavior as groups and individually. The end.
So it's a deconstruction of deconstructionism.
Indeed, and I hope to, I hope to nail them with the need for orientation, the need to plant a flag, the need to recognize borders and rallying points, and to have reliability in the marked environment. You look at like somebody saying, buy new bingo and, experience a whole new world as you purchase this. It's all nonsense. It's all lies. It's all like one gigantic false flag operation. Or like think about the idea of stolen valor, where they have medals that they put on their chest and they can be prosecuted because they didn't properly earn them. There are so many dimensions of life where you have to be able to rely on what the signal or indicator is, or society falls apart. And we've got these verminous leftists turned loose with our language who believe that there is no point of orientation. And they believe that because they think it's all arbitrary based on spoken language. And I'm like, nope. A panda turns upside down to piss higher on a tree trunk in order to make itself seem larger. There is lying in the environment with environmental marks, but usually it's used between species when they're competing. But if within a species we allow the proliferation of marks that are unreliable as environmental indicators, then you could expect to see society break down. And I think we're seeing that. Sorry, again, very long-winded, but that's sort of the bigger project that this translation of the Ottoman stuff all fits into.
Interesting.
Cool, man. No, I think that's really cool. And when are you expecting to have it published?
Well, I'm finally finishing the Ottoman stuff into English now. I've literally got like 1/2 of a page left. And then once I get that, I think I'm going to try to kickstart having it checked. I need an Ottomanist to check the translation into English. And then I think what I want to do is get translations done from the English, since there aren't that many people who are good with Ottoman. And the text has a number of challenges of its own. I want to translate it into Russian and Arabic. And then with English, the original Ottoman transliterated into Turkish and Arabic and Russian, I can basically sell it to all the Circassian peoples in their diaspora and hopefully raise some money from it to continue to live for the amount of time necessary to complete the next books in the pipeline. But so it could be as soon as 2-3 weeks that I have the basic translation finally finished after 10 years.
Damn.
Wow.
Nice, man.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Cheers. And Prudentialist is back. I've been talking to you about marks and signs. What's the word, man? What does the future hold for you?
Well, I mean, things are going well. Right now, between starting the new job on Tuesday, my life right now consists about like 2 or 3 times a week making the drive down to Dallas, which is about like an hour and a half for me to get to the transplant clinic. And it's just labs and then meeting with a nephrologist to just see how everything's doing. But things have been good so far. Like in the last since the surgery, so it's been what 3 weeks now, just more or less, and it's been this constant, just good news, good news, good news, and then I'm riding this high because of it. So, like the kidney function went from like a creatinine level of 21, like immediately after the transplant, to just yesterday I'm at like 2.4, which is awesome for what I'm dealing with because your average level is supposed to be around like 1. So from like 3 weeks time, I'm very close to what's considered normal. So I'm very pleased with how everything's doing. That and just
Nice.
a metric ton of medication to take every day. I've basically nuked my immune system in the last 3 weeks, but that's okay. It beats dying, as I like to joke with my parents.
Is that basically immune response suppressors or something?
Yeah, immunosuppressants. So I'm on like 3 different kinds just to keep things going. And then a bunch of other stuff to keep my blood pressure at a ridiculously low level because the kidney I was given was like a pediatric kidney. So it was a child's, which is a morbid benefit because it'll grow into a full-sized adult one, which means hopefully it will live longer and it'll function longer than the average graft that they give you. So it's nice, but it weighs on you because you know that someone's child had to pass for this to happen.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, yeah, and Charlemagne in the chat said something about going to Dallas. That must suck.
It does. The
I-
traffic
I-
the traffic is terrible.
Oh,
The
no,
roads are
Charlemagne.
terrible. It's awful. That feel when your kidney outlives you.
Charlemagne.
I don't think I'll put that in my donor letter, Charlemagne, but you're absolutely right.
Oh God.
I'm excited. Speaking of kidneys and dead children, I guess.
That got morbid.
Yeah, my sister just had a preemie. She's fine. She's very healthy. But I'm going to meet her. Actually, I'm going to drive down to where I used to live, my hometown, see my parents for the 4th of July. I got it off last minute, and I said, okay, I'm going to go meet my niece. So that's exciting. But
Uncle David.
Yeah, right. I've been an uncle forever. I'm the youngest of my siblings, and we're a big family. So, if you saw us, you would assume we're either Catholic or Mormon, but we're neither. But Prudentialist, I wanted to ask a little bit about like the vaccination thing.
Oh, sure, go for it.
I know we've chatted. They've been pressuring you to get it, right?
Oh yeah, they've been adamant that I get it. They were like the day I was discharged, they give you this long sort of like, here's this binder, here's everything you need to know how to take care of yourself when you leave. And then the pharmacist comes in and she was just like, here's all the medications you're going to be taking for like the next 6 months. Here's your first month's supply, which is ridiculously expensive. But no, she was like, yeah, we highly recommend that you get the vaccine. And I'm just like, why? Like, I don't mean to be rude, but like, I'm on immunosuppressants. How on earth is this going to generate an immune response? Because every report, every journal, everything I've ever read, and I pulled it up on my phone because I wasn't going to be, I'm not going to give this woman the benefit of the doubt of her thinking I'm some idiot. Like, I know how to read a scientific paper. And I was just like, these people don't have an immune response. And she's like, well, there are some trials coming out of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that say otherwise. And she's like, if you're going to get it, you guys should get that one. And I'm like, and my parents are skeptical about it as well. So they were just like, yeah, no, it's we're not doing that. But even when it first came out, when I was still on dialysis, they were like, well, you should get it. And it's just like, why? Like, there's no point with me, taking something that has been the most rushed vaccine, treatment, whatever, in the human history, right? And it's an entirely different method of, administering an immune response. So, but yeah, I get a lot of pressure from, the doctors and the pharmacists. It's quite frustrating.
Well, I'm glad your channel was back for one live stream.
Yeah, I know, right? It's going to get struck now. Here we go.
And I'm not sure if there's anything more off-putting than the snide dismissal of concerns that comes from those who now wear the white coats of those who know. I always hammer on it, but we say white collar. They're the people who speak Latin. They call them doctors, like the learned ones. All the claptrap that surrounds our physicians today. Doctors of the church, learned theologians. Once upon a time, doctor meant learned, right? And you went, and if you were a quote unquote white collar, that meant you were in the professions, which is a term that goes back to professing the faith. And doctors like to speak dog Latin to you. Lawyers like to speak dog Latin to you. It's all a cluster of what in our society was once the learned people of the schools, who were the doctors and the wise ones, who were also priests who were supposed to lecture you. So now these days you go to the physicians and they wear a white coat and they speak bad Latin and they tell you to make lifestyle changes. You're supposed to confess to them and they'll prescribe something. You hope that the tests come back without bad information. I probably sound insane to everyone, but to me, it just sounds like an echo of our past, where we want to go to some priest to have them address our concerns and our afflictions. And because it's materialist today, we don't talk about a soul. It's all about the body. Well, you've got to straighten up your lifestyle. There could be something happening. Repent. And there's just a snottiness of the learned ones, the priestly class, the physicians, who, in my experience, tend to dismiss your very reasonable questions. Like, why would I get a vaccine that's designed to trigger an immune response when I'm on immunosuppressants? It's like, duh, and yet they'll get this sort of patronizing expression with you. It's, well, you don't understand the intricacies of canon law and theological doctrine. Allow me to explain them to you. It just seems like a gutted materialist replacement of a whole superstructure of religion that's now long gone. And these, I always think to myself that quote, will no one rid me of this troublesome priest, whenever I'm sitting across from a white-coated physician.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you can look at the Harvard admission tests in the 1920s and 1800s, and it's so drastically different. Like you mentioned dog Latin. They actually had to know real Latin, like Latin that was fluent. And yeah, it has devolved quite drastically, but I think that there is a reason people, the white collars act that way. I mean, they go to college for 8 years or 6 years, and I mean, they're programmed by society to think they're better. So the real question is, like, where did it begin and how can it stop? But probably for another time, right?
Well, I think for Semiagog, I think the biggest way that you see that happening, especially with like the material and not really looking at the soul, though, is sort of this sort of pathologizing of every sort of single neuroticism or aspect of one's behavior, of what's right or wrong. And we see that with therapists, right? They say that a good therapist is the one that you never leave, because why would they want to, lose their revenue stream? And I just think about that all the time, because I see all these millennials on Twitter, because I love going through like normie or lefty Twitter, because it's just a really weird insight into sort of that urban soulless bugman, where it's just like, if you don't have a therapist by 30, you're doing something wrong. And it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a horror show, man. It's like, the priest of godling A, B, or C, wants you to keep bringing chickens to sacrifice because, once the long bones and the fat are flung off for the god to enjoy, he gets to eat the meat. It's like your therapist. I said it in, I think, a chat recently, maybe it was on Popular Opinions. I'm like, therapists are for people who don't have like priests or friends. I mean, now I'm not saying that there aren't some particular circumstances where therapy can be useful, etc. But for the most part, I remember when I was living in Turkey, I'd have some problem and I'd go talk to one of my old friends who lived there. I'm like, you have a problem, go talk to someone who will listen and cares,
right.
rather than someone who's like, taking a look at the speed chess clock, he's like watching the hands turn over your shoulder. And, listening to the clinking sound as the coins fall into the piggy bank. It's all just horrifying. It's human beings. I don't know. It's just horrifying.
Well, and I think it has a lot to do with sort of the destruction of male friendships, right? Like there was a time, I always refer back to like Achilles and Patroclus, because to me that is just the classical example of what like a male bond should look like.
Steve would approve.
Yeah, I'm sure he would.
Oh, yeah.
But no, it's just I see all this sort of destruction of just the male friendship and how you have this. I'm going to refer back like that Bugman culture of just the destruction of male friendships. They have to make it sexual. They have to make it queer. They have to make it something that other than the fact that men are designed naturally to bond. And I think the fact that we've had this destruction of like male friendships, I think you could probably correlate that with the rise of like, medicalization and the pathologizing of deviants and therapists, all over the place, and the prescription of SSRIs and more.
Yeah. I was just sorry. Damn. I gotta have a sip of tea. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm plugging my channel in the chat because someone asked. So.
Well, that's what we're here for. We're all here to network and to get along.
I'm not getting along with you.
What?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but
is this like some Zoomer humor I don't get? I don't know, man. I'm old.
Yeah, dude, it's post-ironic, dude. I was talking to people at work the other day. I remember saying everything I say is layered in is so deeply layered in such amount of irony that I don't even know what I mean anymore, to be honest. I find myself confused. Like, I want to seem genuine, but also being genuine is weird. So the best thing to do is to just, if you're confused, everyone's confused. And then you have a protective, maybe it's a cope. Maybe it's like a protective, like, defense mechanism.
So why is it weird to be genuine? And this is now me just asking because I'm older than you and I'm curious what you mean, because I don't think it's difficult to be. I don't think to genuinely express something.
No, I don't. Yeah, okay. I don't think it's like that weird to be like genuine, but maybe it's just a feeling of awkwardness that we're so used to, so separated. I don't remember a time before smartphones. I don't know if you do, Prude, but I'm only 18. And there's this like this separation that people have from one another, especially with people I'm working with that are older than me. Maybe it's an age thing, but like you don't want to seem too serious, I think.
So you don't want to seem too serious because you don't want to come off as like some sort of gruff or.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
That sounds like Gen X irony defense to me. I mean, like the Darty stuff that AA talks about. That is my generation. It's so strange to hear somebody who's 18 talking about being afflicted with it, because that's what we specialized in. The whole thing of like, don't take anything seriously. Don't appear as though you're committed to anything. Always be prepared for ironic disavowal, as a sort of posture of defense.
Yeah, it's like the guy in the chat says, Geomancer says it's a defense against criticism. I would say that's totally true. But also it's just fun. I think it's fun, and I enjoy having fun more than just about anything else, probably. And if that means I'd be so ironic, I don't even know what's going on. I might be a Gen Xer. One of my best friends is I'm friends with a lot of Gen Xers, actually.
I'm not anti-Gen X. All my friends are Gen X.
It's true. I'm
some,
not.
Some of my best friends are Gen Xers.
It's true. It's true. Look, frankly, to be honest, you can't be anti something if you have a bunch of friends that are that something.
That is true.
That's a fact.
We're not going to be around much longer. I'm actually a Gen Xer, and I don't want to hear anything about y'all being old, man. I'm staring down both barrels of like dissolution.
Oh yeah, I'm totally old.
The dusty grave.
Right. Yeah, it's all good.
I'm like, my back hurts, dude.
Kettlebell swings, man.
Yeah.
Kettlebell swings.
We Zoomers, no, that's exactly right. Gen X started the irony. We were born into it, and we've adapted it, and we've manipulated it. Everything is so stupid and so crazy now that kind of a coping mechanism to the ridiculousness of life is just layering everything in such irony. Like men can be women and women can be men, and things don't actually exist that used to be fundamental to a civilization or people. So I think maybe it's something to do with that, or maybe I'm thinking like we're digging too deep into it. Maybe it's just
I actually touched on a point with this with Aaron on my millennial culture stream, and one of the things that I mentioned was that a lot of culture made for millennials was actually made by Gen Xers, and a lot of that sort of ironic, not taking things too seriously, sort of stuff like a classic example would be South Park.
Yeah.
A lot of that sort of snide, like, just sort of almost kind of elitist in a way, just that sort of aloof, not taking anything too seriously stuff was imbibed by millennials and, also Gen Zers, at least a lot of them. And I think it did have an effect. I know at least in my friend group, that was kind of, the cool thing to sort of be kind of sort of ironic and whatnot and try to take the piss out of things. But on the back end of that, you also had the sincerity that you did get was, kind of cynical programming for progressivism, essentially, which has, it's sort of funny growing up and, kind of being on my own now, having a family and whatnot, and sort of seeing how a lot of my buddies kind of turned out. That ended up sort of becoming the thing they did sort of clamp onto. So they imbibed in the irony, not taking things too seriously, to sort of, which kind of undermined, in many cases, the sort of Christianity or cultural Christianity that they're sort of raised around. And then once that had been sort of torn down, what appeared as sincerity was progressivism, which is sort of what they glommed onto. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's kind of intentional, personally.
There's also something about it that feels like, Mithridates Eupator, he was famous for taking progressive doses of poison until he was totally impervious to any kind of poison, taking his Mithraicum. I feel like the, to your point, Mr. Patriarch, about the Gen Xers having produced the content for the millennials and others that came later. It's like the Gen Xers adopted it as a pose, but the millennials swam in it. And oddly enough, for reasons that aren't entirely clear to me, they seem to be the generation that's impervious to irony. Like they've been taking the Mithraicum so long that nothing touches or affects them. But the really strange part about it is that they're doing things that are, irony is the only way to view it, in the sense that they're at the peaks of absurdity. And yet somehow there's something about millennials that I see that they just seem utterly clueless about it. It's like they're a walking caricature. And I guess it's the Gen Xers' fault for, dipping them in irony their whole lives, but they just don't, they're impervious to irony. They can't see it. They don't understand what caricatures they are. But here I am fomenting generational warfare.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting what Mr. Patriarch was saying too, because whereas millennials were, their culture was deeply influenced by Generation X. I'd say there's almost two different sets of Zoomers. There are those that were on the internet way too much, including myself, which were our culture was informed by online content creators that just so happened to be very young millennials, nearly Zoomers themselves, or there were those that stayed normal. The ones that were informed by the mainstream, by those Gen Xers and millennials that were then getting into the workforce and curating that television content. I know that growing up, probably past the age of maybe 12 or 14 or somewhere around there, the amount of time I spent watching TV, and I wish I had done neither in hindsight, but the amount of time I spent watching TV entirely collapsed and was replaced with YouTube, and video games, and people playing video games on YouTube, and Sargon of Akkad, and stuff like this. And so I think that there are two types of Zoomers, autists and schizos. No, those are the same people. But there is this stark difference between there's two different cultures that have come out of Zoomers. There are those that are just highly disaffected, I think, and like use that double layer of irony as a kind of a coping mechanism. And then there are those that are normal, right? That are now probably in college and posting, black photos on their Instagram for BLM and think that it's normal to have an OnlyFans, right? So the effect of this is basically what we've already seen. It's just a more diverging culture in the way people operate.
Yeah. Well, I think at least in terms of your own life and good things you can do, what we were talking about a bit earlier with the whole male camaraderie thing. I was talking with my wife the other day. I just got back from a braai with some good friends of mine. And, I'm kind of the young guy in the group. I got all kinds of friends, Gen X friends and millennial friends. But at this braai, it was a really cool vibe. And there was a bunch of guys of different age. Like the oldest guy was, I think, 52. And there was me and guys in their late 30s and whatnot. And they're all guys who kind of get it, guys who sort of share my same values, share my same worldview. We could be controversial if we want to be, the filter's off. And it's like a real sort of brotherhood, like fellowship. And I know, like, if I need anything, I could count on these guys and vice versa. And when you're in that environment, it's sort of, and you're around people that you trust and can be yourself around, it really does, I think, help kind of tear down that sort of, facade that you have to put up, that trying to be ironic all the time. And, it really helps you have, real connections, right? In a platonic way. And it's really edifying. And I was talking with my wife about it, and I says, is it a is it just a guy thing where, you're around a bunch of dudes and you get each other all pumped up and you come back and you're like, yes. And she's like, yeah, no, that's the guy thing. Like, chicks don't really do that. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't think so. Like you guys come together, you have your pleasantries, you chit chat, and, it's maybe nice, but it's not as energizing, I think. So there is something to say about like real authentic relationships and trying to find, bros in your area that you can, be yourself around, I think is actually a really good thing. And it's also good for, networking and strategizing. Like, one of the things we've been talking about is like strategies and like little practical things, we can do like in my group down here to, sort of preserve us against some of the chicaneries of the ANC or whatever, So yeah, that would be my advice, try and do that as much as possible.
I see the irony to some extent as a defense, like we were talking about, because it's all about mood and causing offense. And if you're ironic in your presentation, then you can always fall back on, I didn't really mean it. It was irony. I didn't mean to offend you. It's almost like the irony, I don't know, it's just sort of coming into my mind at this moment. So don't expect a fully formed thought, but it seems like the irony is a masculine response to a feminine environment. I've observed in the past that, like, when you're dealing with
I'm a Chad then.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm a Chad then because
I'm fully Chad. Feel my Giga Chad powers. You've got with women, they're and I think it's on an evolutionary basis, they're tuning themselves based on their emotional responses. So they almost sing together when they're working in groups. They're saying something, oh, hi, hey, hi. They pitch themselves to speak in the same fashion. And it's not so much, and I've talked about this before, people have heard it on my channel, but the short version is that it's not about the specific content of the message. It's about the mood in which it's conveyed. And so they're showing that they're social and they're ready to interact with you and that they're emotionally supportive based on the tone. And I think that goes back to evolution, to Mr. Patriarch's point about guys getting together and then talking about strategy or something. They're out hunting in the woods. They got to bring something down. They got to read the track on the ground and get it accurate. Because if they think that they're chasing down a rabbit and it's actually a tiger, then they're not going to come home with dinner. They're going to become dinner. So the reliability of the marks and the things that they read in their environment actually matters. The facts matter. The specific details matter. How far it is that you have to walk in concrete terms. How many men will be required to surround it in concrete terms? All of that matters. Whereas with the females, there's that to a certain extent. It's not entirely black and white, but they're showing that they're in a good emotional state with each other, and that they're ready to work with each other, and that there's not somebody standing out as, you know, being upset who needs to be addressed on an emotional level. And if you look at the division between how men operate, and much of their stuff is all in silence. You know, I'm always talking about, everybody who's watched my channel seen me go off on this business of how, you know, attack parties always have to pump their fist and do weird hand gestures and say go, 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 and do all kinds of gestures like take a fist and pull their hand down to indicate that the squad behind them has to stop. All of these are silent gestures that you would use while hunting, because you have to get up on the prey. You have to read the signs. You have to understand the value of the marks and use them to navigate in order to bring food home and not become dinner. Women, they're carrying a bunch of children around, they're digging up roots, they're smacking lizards over the head and throwing it into a pouch. They're bringing in small amounts of protein, working in groups. They've got children who are leaving these big ass scent plumes that any animal could smell from, you know, miles away. They're making noises to cooperate and indicate emotional state. Men are relying on the actual facts because it matters for them to be successful. That's why you see, as I've said before, a man and a woman, the guy will be like, well, I just told her this and such. She's like, it's how you said it to me. It's not what you said that upsets me. So coming all the way back around, if you think about irony, irony seems like a masculine defense mechanism when surrounded by feminine standards of communication. You're just like, oh God, here they're about to attack me again and say that I made him cry. I'll be like, no, it was just a joke. It was just ironic. I'm not standing behind this position. I've even seen it with Brits, and now I'll shut up. But like, the Brits can't deal with Americans the same way because they're used to turning everything into a question. They're like, well, that isn't entirely true, is it? Right? They'll always phrase something to have a little bit of equivocation where they can back out of it. And Americans seem like they just stroll in all blunt with their balls wagging, and they're like, no, it's like this. And they're like, could you be more blunt? You know, I don't suppose that's quite right, is it? And we see it even with the soy faces who turn their voice into an uplifting question at the end, so as never to seem like they're making a strong assertion. Once again, a feminine environment in which men have to find some way to navigate without entirely becoming eunuchs. So they just tie off one ball with the irony.
Yeah, that's quite precise. The way that people, what do they call that when you go like this at the end of a question to make
upspeak?
Upspeaking. Oh gosh, everybody talks about how much they hate it. I'll just reaffirm, I hate it. I think that you're 100% right. It's a way for men to to not be masculine actually, and it's just feeds into more of what we're already seeing after the sexual revolution. But with the female etiquette, and someone in the chat brought it up too, there is this the distributor said something along the lines of like the corporate etiquette is crushing to a man. And I wanted to know if you guys have had any experience with this, because I'm still young. I've worked on a farm, I've worked in a kitchen, and I've worked now in a market. And so I wanted to know, like, this corporate etiquette, is it something that you guys have experienced in your own way?
Yes. And I'm only 25, but I've worked like since out of high school. I've worked for attorneys, I've worked for firms, and I've worked for a lot of things, because originally in undergrad I was planning to become a lawyer before I decided that I got tired of working for lawyers and the legal process sort of disillusioned me and I sought another path. But in my last job, my most recent one, was this very big corporate chain that managed a bunch of offices and dental groups and things like that. But you had like your morning pillar, and you had to talk about just these sort of these questioned prompts that were very feminine in nature about, communication or empathy, or how do you care for others, and how do you improve yourself, and what do you do? And it was very like, well, how do you do therapy? And, of course, I was like the only man in this like entire department, and it was just an absolute nightmare it's like, I can't express myself in this room in any sort of honest fashion, because to do so would either cause offense or I would be policed for my tone. And you also see it a lot increasingly, especially in the legal field, that weird social interaction between attorneys or between, fellow paralegals or whatnot. You definitely have the problem of this corporate etiquette, this corporate, neutered, gender neutral, politically correct speech, to where even you could have the most masculine, say like 1990s Bill Gates, who was just ruthless. I don't think he could survive in today's environment at all.
Yeah, that's true. And I was actually thinking about it. I was raised in the church, and I'd say the church is a very similar way. Specifically, something that I don't like, children's church, where the kids go and have their watered down Bible study about Jonah in the belly of the well for the 5th time this year. It is obviously dominated by the women, just because that's how it plays out socially. And it was soul crushing, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. And even beyond that, I mean, I really had to like fight through my development to come out on the other side within the same church and actually feel like someone that could fit in, because everything was just so, it was pussified, like, and the whole world is. And I'm sitting, I'm doing frozen food today. I'm packaging the storefront. I work at a market, and I'm like, I was thinking about a tweet I made last night, which said, "Why is everyone fat?" I've lost 40 pounds in the last 6 months, and now I see fat people, and I know I'm not great. I still got to lose more, and I'm like, come on, guys, it's not that hard. And I'm working, and I look on one of the freezer doors, and it says, "Indulge a little," and it was ice cream, and I was like, indulge a little, and that made me irrationally angry. Autistically angry. And I'm sitting here and I'm putting up like 15 different flavors of chocolate chip ice cream, and I'm thinking to myself, why is everything so effing like gay and fake? And it is a part of that, like a part of the feeling, the mass consumerism, the everybody has to be fulfilled in their own way. I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, we could have 4 flavors of ice cream and everybody would be content. Like, you wouldn't be missing anything if we got rid of minted chocolate chip with cookie dough in it. You wouldn't feel anything. And that's what this feeling of living in a feminine environment is really. It just feels so fake to me, and it's repulsive.
Repulsive. Tell them how you really feel. Don't hold back. The way I see it is that the best way I ever heard a quote was by my friend Tim, who definitely approaches things in a masculine fashion. It's basically, if it's true, it's true, and if it ain't, it ain't. And there's a whole part of society that just bridles and buckles at that assertion. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, especially when you're having to deal with crises, it seems like you need that person who's willing to just, I mean, I don't want to get in trouble, but, call a spade a spade. Obviously the origins of that expression, for people who are too foolish to know, who might come through and listen, is referring to the suits of the cards. But that's what's required. And it seems like we don't have it. And it's like, how big of a crisis is going to have to come to clear out the Augean stables? Do we need to, like Hercules, divert an entire river because the stables are full of so much, horse shit, that it's going to take something on that scale to clear things out? I don't know. I mean, what's it like down in South Africa in that respect? The scene there is a little bit different, Mr. Patriarch, from everything I've heard. I can't follow it entirely, to be honest, because there's so many different features and factors that defy oversimplification. But I mean, do you find there where, you know, everything's supposed to be, you know, commie redistribution and all the rest, but you've got a very large representation of Black culture? Do you find that it's feminized there too?
It's a good question. Let me ruminate on that a bit. I think, okay, so the thing about South Africa is there's many different kinds of cultures here, of course, just as there are in the U.S., but as living as a minority, you're sort of made maybe a bit more aware of all the different sort of subcultures going on. I would say that white culture in South Africa, white culture is kind of feminized, but it depends, right? So I would say the urban middle class have been thoroughly feminized, like you find across the West. The rural types, not so much. So the Afrikaners out on the veld in the farmland and whatnot, they're a little more, they're a little less feminized for sure. And they're doing lots of, the Afrikaners in particular are pretty good at organizing and trying to put together civic organizations and run sort of parallel institutions to sort of preserve, you know, their own communities. The colored community, which is definition down here for mulattoes, they are the biggest population here in the province that I live. And their community is basically has a lot of the same problems that you find in Black American culture. So a lot of gangsterism, a lot of single parenthood, drug addiction. So on the one end of it, you end up with kind of a both this weird sort of feminized and hypermasculine sort of culture. So you got sort of gangster machismo, but everyone's raised, or not everybody, but a lot of people are raised by single moms. And so it's sort of a very matriarchal kind of system. The same's also true with Black culture across South Africa. So particularly in the urban areas, tons of single parenthood, and a lot of the kids are usually very often raised by their grandparents. So there, it's I mean, the whole the problem with South Africa is the traditional social fabric of like familial connections and whatnot have just been torpedoed for the past 30 years or so, and so the problems there are just, you know, I wouldn't say it's feminized. It is sort of being feminized, but again, mostly the feminization across racial lines is mostly a class thing, right? So if you're middle class, if you're upper middle class, if you're, you know, upper class or whatever, I would say they have been thoroughly feminized across racial lines. So, you know, like people I know who are in professional track, you know, working in finance, you know, medicine or whatever. They're very sedate and effete. And you see this coming too in some of the private schools and whatnot. So the problem with the public schools is the teachers just don't show up. So it's like, it's like third world fraudulent education. You know, it's a shit show. But the problem with the private schools is that a lot of these bad ideas coming out of America essentially are starting to trickle in. Like a friend of mine was on the board at a school where he sent his girls and they were wanting to introduce like, LGBT stuff. And, it's a problem here. And that's true across the culture, and not just that kind of thing, like, the culture war stuff, but also the feminization. So yeah, I would say, but here it's more of an import item, if that makes any sense. And it hasn't penetrated most of the people mentally, but it has permeated across the people that matter, if that makes sense, right? The ones making the decisions, the ones with the money.
Yeah, if you just ask them, they'll tell you they're the ones that matter.
Yeah.
All this talk has kind of reminded me of that line from Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club, where the Durden and them are having that conversation, where it's just like, yeah, we're the first generation raised almost entirely by women. And that made me think about this in this conversation, because it's just like, well, it's been increasingly feminized for quite a while now, that there's not really a uniquely male space or a male role. And even amongst like the demographics here in the United States, single parenthood is coming up, and almost with how the laws are formulated in family law, especially, it goes to the mom almost 99% of the time. And I think what is frustrating about it, at least, right, is that I think about that impact, especially on our issues between various, ethnic lines in the United States, where it's just like, we live in this world of grievance politics and sort of like these petty reminders of what's happened in the past. And Mr. Patriarch sort of just brought up Black culture. And I think about that here in the US, where it's just like, you want to talk about the evils of, say, the 1619 Project or slavery, but we're not going to talk about the absolute destruction of Black culture from like 1965 onward, from the Great Society. Like, in 2 generations, you wiped out Black home ownership, you wiped out Black families with a mom and a dad. And to me, I think that that's just as destructive. And I think that if you ever wanted a sign of sort of like that modernity is poison, I would point to that every single time.
So what's the future of the channel look like, Prude?
Well, we're gonna go back to our, I know that was a long rant, but I had to go off on it because I don't know where I have this essay that I don't know if I can post on Substack, because it talks about sort of these racial things.
Is Substack, seriously? I didn't know they censored anything.
Well, they have a terms of service that ironically Curtis Yarvin spent. Well, yeah, no, it's ironic that
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm sorry.
You're good, but like Curtis Yarvin spent like 4,500 words or more trying to like break down the terms of service and why it's good or why it's bad, which I thought was the most autistic thing to write about, but whatever. What's terrible, what I thought was interesting though, is that I have sort of this essay that I've written inspired by Nick Land's chapter in The Dark Enlightenment about the Cracker Factory. And I don't know where to put it, because it's just like, this is relatively spicy, because the corollary is that if there's a cracker factory, there's a melanin enriched factory for those for the fellas, where the idea of unity is not a good idea, because then unity is equated with whiteness, color blindness is equated with whiteness, and all that's bad. And this is even before all the CRT stuff entered the mainstream. So I've been sitting on this for forever, and I don't know where to put it. So that's challenge number 1. But as for the future of the channel, next Sunday we'll be going back to the Sunday stream. So we'll be doing more geopolitical forecasting. I'm going to start providing an incentive to those who donate on Subscribestar to have their topics introduced so we can talk about it for a report. And then I've got some scripted stuff in the works. I'm working on one right now about streaming services and how they're sort of the American gulag. Like, you won't need an actual re-education camp in the United States when things really hit the fan. Because why would you need to when you can just pay, $8.99 a month to have your woke indoctrination sent directly to your TV screen?
So what do you mean by that? It's $8 a month to be indoctrinated.
So, okay, I mean,
I mean, do you mean like they're gonna force
Oh
us to
no.
participate
But
in
I
it?
mean, there's a
Net-
market solution already in place, right, to indoctrinate people.
Okay, yes, and it's effective too.
It's incredibly effective because it's just like I have a Netflix account. I use it to watch like old Star Trek TV shows. I don't even look at anything that's remotely new because it's all just absolutely paused. Like, why would I bother?
Right.
And so that's really all that I have it for, is just a place to have like Trek and just readily and accessible. And I mean, my parents use it, whatever, and it's fine. But like, it's just most of the TV shows that everyone watches are like pre-2010, because that's when TV was okay. You know, like my favorite sitcom of all time is like Cheers and Frasier. I don't watch anything relatively new or anything. I think the most recent TV show that was like a sitcom was like Scrubs, because every time I got home living overseas when that show was running, you know, I would watch it once I got off the bus from school. So like it was enjoyable because we had Sky TV, we had British cable.
Ooh.
But like,
I
other than
don't
that,
know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs.
they're coming again.
See, I have no clue what you're talking about because, like I said, purely raised on YouTube.
Yeah. That goes back to the generational thing, right? Like, because for me, right, I always defined the millennial Gen Z divide as the who has a memory of 9/11. Like, if you have a living memory of 9/11, then congratulations, I'm going to put you in the millennial category. If you don't have a memory of it, or you were born after 9/11, you go straight to the Gen Z category.
Yeah, I wasn't alive. And then beyond that, I mean, there are so many different points that you could use to separate groups. Like people who remember the 2016 election cycle and were able to follow the nuances of it and remember that with good clarity. They're the boomer of the Zoomers. Like they are the old, like my friends that I roommate with. They're like 22. Like they're technically Zoomers. I was in 8th grade in 2016. Like I remember it.
Yes.
I remember voting for Donald Trump in the social studies election. He won massively, by the way. I remember being yeah, you are old. I remember being hesitant of Trump in the beginning because I remember my sister telling me, who's older than me, by the way, but is still knew less politics than I did at the time. I remember her telling me that she's concerned that Donald Trump is being paid by Hillary Clinton to sink the Republicans. And I remember Steven Crowder and a few things here and there and a couple of the debates, but I don't remember it with good clarity. You know, I remember very little about anything before 2014 Obama politics. So there's a lot of stuff that you can like separate groups with. I mean, a lot of pivotal moments in the last 20 years. It's like for the Generation Alpha coming up, who remembers the COVID lockdowns is going to be a big deal, I'm sure. Stuff like this. So there's these lines that are being drawn, I think matter a lot and will affect the psyche. Though and I think going back, did you guys see this Netflix show that they put out? It's I think they call it Queer Force.
Yeah, I saw that. Charlemagne had a really good tweet about it. I wanted that video, or that little trailer that they put out inspired me to do the American Gulag video. Because there are no words to describe the absolute corporate pandering and just objectification. But at the same time, it's just like, look, we're going to put all these people out, and it's just manufacturing consent, right? Like, we're going to do everything we can to promote this social contagion. And we're going to, put it out there and encourage it again, because like all those like Pew Research Center polls that are talking about where it's like 20-something% of Gen Z, identifies as some kind of non-straight entity. And I find that absolutely ridiculous. It's like the whole trans trender thing is very accurate. And to me, I think it's the fact that the progressives don't have a positive role model for what it means to be masculine. They've spent the last
human, actually.
Well, to be human, but more importantly, masculine, right? Like,
right.
You talked about this too, in about BreadTube in your video, where you talked about Philosophy Tube and all the others, where it's just like, okay, where do white men in the progressive movement go? There's no positive role model for a white man in the progressive movement. You are toxic masculinity. You are white. You are male. You are probably straight and cis. You are, for all intents and purposes, you are the embodiment of evil. So what do? You have to find some sort of way to either hide these cursed original sins that the progressive religion has given you. And how do you do that? You transition. You identify as bisexual. You identify as neurodivergent. You identify with some sort of mental disorder. There is no positive role model.
Yeah, exactly. And I just have to, sorry for interrupting.
You're fine.
This HH Bomber guy who has like 2 million subscribers, he's a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
on BreadTube
takes.
Yeah, it's bad. But he has I can't remember this condition that makes him go bald, and they've used this as like social justice brownie points
about going bald.
Yeah, it's like this hair condition thing. I'm gonna Google it.
Oh, alopecia.
Perhaps. But this thing like has become a staple of his character, like his and he's also bisexual, so there's that as well.
Oh,
as a bisexual man with alopecia, I just want to say, is that sort of thing, or?
Yes.
Actually. Oh my God, it's as bad as Biden getting a pity party for quote unquote stuttering. Well, I mean, he does stutter.
I don't, I love it when they stutter, because I like sending people that speech where he talks about he doesn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle, and I'm like, hey, is he stuttering here? I'm just curious. It's frustrating. The sheer cover and the sheer projection. Like I remember the fact that they accepted it, internalized it, and then decided to just blow it off was that New Yorker article during the 2020 election cycle, where it was like, Joe Biden, please don't die. All that we need is your corporeal form to pass the finish line. And I was like, good God, like there's no respect, I guess, there hasn't been for a while now. There's been no respect for country. There's been no respect for the national identity. And to me, who's someone who grew up in like a military family, it breaks my heart knowing that I have this like idealized notion of what the United States is or was, and it no longer exists. And you're sort of just like walking around amongst like the man among the ruins, and you look at what's going on in the news, and I feel like the end scene of the Planet of the Apes, where it's just like, damn you, you blew it all up, you ruined it, and it's just it's very blackpilling. But you have to. I take it as motivation to do the best that I can, to live the best life that I can, and to service myself and my community.
Yeah, no, it's really depressing. I mean, I think about when I grew up and where I grew up, and, it just seemed so great, like really great. And now, it's just seeing it all go to shit it really makes you mad, and also a little bit sad too, just thinking about how it used to be and what it ain't anymore. It's just it is pretty blackpilling. But like you say, that is when a man of action needs to sort of step up in your own small way, try to find something that you can do that will make your situation more tolerable, to hold on to what was good and to carry it forward.
Yeah, it's one thing to like no longer be able to hang out in the parking lot with like T-top Trans Ams listening to Black Sabbath. I mean, you poor guys are all so young, you probably never got to see it, but it's something else entirely when you're the powers that be actively despise you and wish to destroy you and to malform you. It's like the whole idea of like, binding women's feet in China. I'm just seeing a generation that's been foot bound, that's going to like run around the little corporate palace with these stunted feet, unable to like walk with mincing little steps because of how their spines have been bent by the structures that are currently all the rage. It's really horrifying to look at. It truly, it's like it's like a kick in the gut to look at it, and then you have to ask yourself, well, I mean, how far does this go? I guess we're about to see, right? It's like Chicago weather. If you don't like it, just wait.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, right? Like, it's weird because I grew up. I'm 25 and going on 26. Like, I grew up, of course, in a military household, but I was there. My father was there in the Pentagon in 9/11, and I've told the story a couple of times on this channel. But like that, you get the brutal wake up call as a kid where your innocence is gone, right? Where it's just like there's evil in the world, things happen. But like, if you were to tell, even like 10-year-old me at the time who has been paying attention to politics since 2004. I was autistic about it. I really didn't like John Kerry because of his like military proposals. I was very adamantly like rah, pro what my dad did and going into war. And then you tell that kid, 10, 15 years from now, oh, by the way, you're gonna cheer when you're gonna post the crab emoji when Donald Rumsfeld dies, and that you consider George W. Bush a war criminal, and that your politics have radically changed from sort of that neoconservative, pro-intervention, pro-NATO kind of deal to whatever the hell I'm moving my politics towards now and trying to figure that out. But it's this weird evolution to grow up in that post 9/11 era and sort of witness the absolute destruction and pillaging of the American culture. I know AA talks about a lot about the sort of going back to the Fresh Prince days, and I know people are nostalgic for it. Even I am sometimes, because I have memories of what it was like before everything hit the fan. But like that's what makes you Gen Z, is that you grew up in this mess and everything else, and to me that's just terrifying. To grow up knowing that this is the world that you have.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say. Mr. Patriarch was talking about blackpilling, and it was to see the change. And I haven't, but also I have, because I read and watch a lot of older content, and I can observe what happened. And it's said often on like Twitter and stuff. I'm not sure where this came from, but at some point you become right wing when you just observe the data or the truth. I guess it's just a thing of observing. You start to notice things, right? Or you notice coincidences and anomalies, and so I can observe what has appeared to happen. I haven't lived through it. I've just seen in a big way the results of it. 2015, 2014, like Gamergate and stuff, and it's like the disaffected young white man. In video games, I remember getting in pretty heated debates about like Battlefield 5 or whatever, when they had like the woman with the hook for an arm running through the Ardennes or whatever. I was like, what? That doesn't make sense in like Gamergate and stuff. On the end of that and the beginning of Trump, and living through it, I don't think is that enjoyable, but it's also made me kind of immune to the black pill in a big way. It's kind of been an on-running joke every time I join the Prudentialist streams here. It gets mentioned somehow that I'll eventually become jaded, and this is what Prudentialist and my buddy tell me in a group chat all the time. You're gonna burn out eventually. You're gonna get jaded. The world's gonna knock you down. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. It can't get much worse than this.
It can, and I think that this is your youthful optimism telling me that you're gonna be okay.
I know. I'm not saying I'm gonna be okay.
You're just not gonna be black pilled.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I wish you all the best.
I'll get back to me on that one.
Well, yeah. I guess it sort of depends what you mean by black pill, right? If it means like despair, giving up, fuck it, just have a good time and whatever, then don't do that. Definitely don't do that.
I don't do that. That's not what we mean.
Yeah, despair is for losers.
It's so true.
But I think having a realistic assessment of the situation that the current order as it exists can't go on forever, and it probably shouldn't exist. I think that's just realistic, essentially,
right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that knowing that the current order can't go on and shouldn't go on is also kind of white pilling, because I have nothing to lose, truthfully, at the end of the day. Maybe
I
it's
mean,
like,
but isn't that just, to me, that's where I think this is where my cynicism comes out, because I have a lot of long conversations with my parents about this, because like it takes us like 20 minutes to get into town. That's how rural I live. It's nice.
right.
But like, they're talking, they ask questions about like home ownership and things like that. And I'm like, I don't think you understand just how absolutely like transformed the economy has become, where they're having articles saying like this is the last chance for millennials to build equity and like buy a home, or the fact that like if you were to take the average like net debt that someone my age who graduated from college like in 2018, right, like they already are like negative almost 20,000 in the hole. It's just like, how do you there's something so fundamentally wrong with how things are. um I mean, they're beginning to get it, and it's a little and they're understanding, because like I've got two younger brothers, and they're one of them is in his 20s, and he's also struggling, and it's just like it is not the same world that you grew up in. And I hate to break it to you, things are going to come a lot later. It is this sort of weird, like Dramer says in the chat, like it's a very peaceful destruction. It's been very subtle over the years, and a lot of it has to do, of course, with like the financial crisis. I mean, there was a really good tweet that came out today. He's like, here's this image about how 27 banks got turned into 4 major like mega corporate investment banks in like the span of like 8 to 10 years. And to me, that is horrifying.
Yeah, I saw that too.
But on top of that, right, is that it's frustrating to know that, like the whole idea of like starting a family will probably come a lot later, because you need to build up wealth and you need to get something stable, and that takes time. And it's just like, I'm at the age now where I get asked the question of like, hey, when are you going to find somebody and settle down? Although like the last year now has kind of put a hold on that, thank God. But no, it's just frustrating to see that happen. And it does make me worry about, what Gen Z and the generation afterwards is going to be like, because it's just, we've witnessed now this complete transformation into sort of this like neo-feudal rentier economy, except the lords and barons of our time have no concern for the serfs, because the serfs can be imported from another country.
Yeah, it's down here in South Africa. It's kind of interesting because, without giving too much information, you can comparatively make not a lot of money compared to what you'd make in the United States, and live like a comfortable life here, essentially. Yeah. Just because of the cost of living difference. And, if you're making like, $3,000 a month, I mean, that's cushy, like you can have lots of fun, you can buy lots of stuff, rent isn't that terrible, particularly if you get outside of downtown and whatnot. And, yeah, it's nice. But I guess my wife and I would be considered by South African standards like lower middle class, right? But even us, we're looking at potentially buying a house, and it's insane. Like even I'm like even we would like struggle to afford a place that is sort of within our price range. And we're not even like in the center of town is the thing. Like the property prices are absolutely insane. And it's all from basically a lot of foreign acquisition. So kind of like what AA was talking about in London with, just whoever buying flats and leaving them vacant, except for, a couple months out of the year when they feel like being in London. That's kind of what's happened to at least Cape Town. So like if you're just some guy working a normal job, right? And you and your wife's working a normal job, and you want to like buy a house. I mean, it's just not going to happen unless you are, again, making, quite good money by South African standards. Like if you're like blue collar, I mean, forget about it. Like you're going to be a renter for the rest of your life, or you'll get a council house if you're the well, you'll get a council house if you're the right demographic, let's say, or you'll be lucky to inherit your parents' place. So yeah, I mean, the amount of capital that's flooding around the world, buying up land real estate, and so on and so forth it's pretty eye opening. And a lot of the companies doing it are foreign. Like I know in Cape Town, for instance, a lot of the land's being bought up by like French investment firms, and
Yes,
all the
they are. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of the property that's sort of on the kind of along the Atlantic coast is bought up by German tourists, and and they just again they come down like during the summer. Yeah, we want to go surfing, and they go do that, and then they go back to Germany, and it just drives up property prices immensely. So yeah, it's not good. So yeah, I mean that this problem isn't just an American problem, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's all over, and anywhere that's sort of developed or developing, it's happening.
Yeah, I know we've had a lot of conversations on Twitter and in other spheres as well, just sort of about the whole like BlackRock thing. Like, to me, that is insane. And I'm pretty far right economically, and I've been reading a lot of Sol, a lot of Mises, a lot of Hayek, but it's just like in no normal society, I think, would allow such one entity to control that much of the housing market and have that much of an influence on the Federal Reserve. To me, it's just I think that's what makes me reactionary, is that it's just like clearly we went somewhere in the wrong direction and we need to go back.
Well, this is something that Peter Thiel talks about, right? Like, and then he's kind of explained this in such a way to say that like Donald Trump's "Make America Great Again" wasn't really making it great again, but more of making it normal. Like a normal country doesn't do this. And that's like you were saying, a normal country doesn't let foreign investment firms have such influence over it. I mean, foreign country or a normal country, I typically, ideally at least, wouldn't let the generals hate it and corrupt it. It wouldn't let the elite and the leaders of the country, like this normally wouldn't happen, or at least it normally shouldn't happen in the way people view the way governments and countries should be ran. And so this reactionary side that people hate so much, and it's become, for some reason, the word reactionary has been popping up a lot more in the leftist dialect as well, I've seen as of late. It's like, no duh. Have you seen what's happened? Nothing is right. And it's like we were talking about earlier. Everything has to be like pathologized or forced into a state of acceptance when it clearly shouldn't be accepted.
And it's not the only time that this business, I mean, of course, you touched on a number of different things, but in terms of the BlackRock thing, this isn't the first time this happened. I mean, I was there and saw the bomb implosion, the .com stuff, and there was then the subprime mortgage lending meltdown. I was there for that. Half the country bankrupted, and enormous numbers of people defaulted on these subprime mortgage, loans. And at the time, I mean, I very specifically remember looking at it and going, "Now, wait a minute, how does this work?" They incentivize all these people who can't be relied upon to service their loans. They incentivize them with like incredibly low interest rates and zero money down and all this kind of stuff. And people all across the country were buying up houses that they were not able to keep. Everything, it was a huge bubble. Go read Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds to look at how early they started these bubble games early on in the 18th century, ripping people off. With all this speculative nonsense, getting the herds whipped up. And around, I don't know, what was it, like 2005, 2006, something like that. Heaps of people, hordes of people lost their homes. And where did all those go? They went to, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, or, the government or the banks ended up owning them. So this isn't the first time that this whole BlackRock ripoff has happened. And so we're seeing a second phase of enormous amounts of private real estate go into the hands of the banks. There's already been one that was cataclysmic for the country. And now everyone's like, what? Huh? what happened? Like they're not even aware that it's already happened once, and now it's happening again. Odd, it just, there's nothing new under the sun. It just keeps seeing, he keeps swimming left.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna hop off here. I'm going to visit my parents down in North Carolina, so I want to be there. It'll be like a 1-day trip for the 4th. Prudentialist, thank you for having me on. Semigog, I think this is the first time me and you are officially speaking. Mr. Patriarch, wonderful talking to you again. You guys can check out my content in DC Perspective YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter. I'll see you later. All right.
Thanks for stopping by, David.
Thank you for having me.
But yeah, you're absolutely right, Semiagog. Things just tend to repeat themselves, and they keep swimming in the exact same direction. And Charlemagne says he's going to do an early life check on where the homes went, and I'm pretty sure it's going to confirm our suspicions.
Yeah, nothing like ye old early life check. Yes.
There was this meme I saw somewhere. I think it was on Twitter or somewhere else or on Telegram. I can't remember. It's just like eventually not to check, and you can just have that gut feeling and tell.
Yeah, that was the one with Neo and Morpheus or whatever, and it's like, so are you telling me that I can early life check? And it's like, no, Neo, I'm telling you that you won't have to. Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, I remember when I saw that meme first, I just instantly knew kind of what it was getting at and thought it was hilarious. And then I laughed more that it was funny that I knew what the meme meant. Anyways, I think I will also go as well. It's a little bit late over here, guys. It's about 10:30, but thanks again also for having me on, Prudentialist. If anyone wants to go check out my stuff, go for it. I had a nice, interview. Yeah, sorry. I had a nice interview with Orthodox clergyman on, I think it was, Thursday. So that's fresh. So if you guys want to go check that out, you're welcome to. I also have a video that was put out yesterday, but it was age restricted by YouTube for stupid reasons. So the numbers on that one are pretty bad. So if you want to go bump up my video numbers on the Machiavelli video and you're of age, you can go check that out. But thanks for having me on, Prudentialist, and nice to talk to you, Semiagog.
Always, sir. Good to talk to you.
Take care, man.
Thanks, man. Stay winning, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Appreciate it. Oh, yeah, I know how he feels about the age-restricted stuff or putting things unlisted. I had a recent lecture from a guest professor on for one of the Sunday streams, and I had to have it unlisted because apparently my other guest had brought up some topics that would probably have gotten him in trouble or canceled. So I'm just like, oh, I have to make this unlisted in private, and that was very frustrating because it was a very good lecture. Oh
yeah, verboten.
Yeah,
it must be removed.
Well, it was removed at his request, which I'm not going to blame him or argue with him about it because it's just like I don't want to lose the guy's livelihood, especially as he's almost finished with his PhD. But it's just like it's very frustrating just because it's like these are good conversations. It was a 2-hour lecture on like neoclassical realism and Russian grand strategy, and it's just like, and it's gone. I'm like, and he put so much work into his PowerPoint presentation. I was just like, damn it.
Yeah, they'll do that to you. I mean, it's a real drag when I had to make the vast majority of my content private and pull it down, and not least because the only thing you get out of this, whole process is, views and people following your account. And, I had, at the time I did that, I had well over 1 million views. And what's odd is that, unless you go to the about page, it just erases all of those. It's like the content was never there. So as soon as you private it, all those views are gone.
Yeah.
But it's a good argument for places like Odyssey that I wish more people would go over and use. But we'll have to see. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, and that's what I've been telling myself as well as the audience is that things are definitely going to get worse before they get better. But it's important to sort of, stay true either to your faith or your values. You can't buckle. You can't bend to the wind.
No, indeed, you must be a stiff-necked people and refuse the yoke. Where, by the way, wasn't John D supposed to come in here? Did that
He was
dirtbag
supposed
just
to
flake out?
I know. Let me go message him now.
Completely unreliable.
Well, he said he was going to be fashionably late, but I'm now going to at him.
Well, yeah. Old D, you can't rely on him.
No,
You just can't rely on him. He's out like welding or something, or making a souffle. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what he does other than cooking and providing art criticism.
I was about to say repartee. That's what he does. That's what he does. And I'm surprised old Charlemagne didn't come through. I guess he just likes to lurk in the chat.
Well, I'm sure he's got things to do, but yeah, I'm gonna go check out Radix as soon as this is over, and I have no idea what Radix is.
Oh, isn't that a Richard Spencer thing?
Oh, is it?
I think that's I might be wrong. I'm an old man. I don't know what the
I mean, he
doing.
was on the Kill stream not too long ago with Ethan Ralph. I watched a bit of that, and he's a totally different. Well, okay, Charlemagne, I'll send you an in. The link is in that group chat. You could easily hop on. I just know that Semyagog and D had responded to the open invite I had on the place. But yeah, I know that he was on the Kill stream not too long ago. And Spencer was just like a complete 180 of who he was in, say, like 2015.
Recommending everyone get vaccinated and vote for Biden.
Well, I mean, he wasn't even. Charlemagne, you're good. If you want to hop on, you totally can. No worries about barging in or anything. This was just a hangout sort of conversation stream. That's all. But yeah, it was definitely different. And I know Charlemagne, I think, watched the entire thing. He could probably tell you more. I only saw like clips and bits and pieces. I haven't finished it yet. The next thing that's on my queue to watch is actually your most recent strategy video.
Oh yeah, that's just a recap.
Oh, it is.
So it's a recap, and then a few points about what to do next. But it's like 1, 2, and 3 reviewed because people, they tend to forget what the hell. They forget what they saw last week. So yeah, tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. I simply added the process of tell them what you're telling them in terms of rhetorical strategy.
Yeah, a lot of that is like I did competitive debate and public speaking for 8 years in high school and college, and the whole tell them what you're going to tell them is something that they emphasize heavily, especially for the more prepared speeches and events. And it's something that's just missing in a lot of communication these days. Not because people purposefully obfuscate. I mean, they do if you work in government or in the media, but I mean, even ordinary everyday people don't seem to know how to be direct anymore about either their intentions or their desires, which I find very interesting. I think there's some sort of correlation that you could point between, say, the rise of these sort of MGTOW or incel movements, if you want to call them that, and just this utter breakdown in how we communicate as people. Because I hear it a lot all the time, especially from younger people who are younger than I am, that are talking about sort of just the difficulties or the problems that exist of like the dating scene or whatnot. And it's just like, I don't find it difficult, but maybe it's a generational thing or how we talk to one another. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all madness. I don't even want to think about growing up today. I'd like literally, it's a horror show. I can't even imagine it. I was getting a little freaked out because this 1 year after I left high school, that was when they put up bars on the windows and metal detectors and had a uniformed police officer, and they had I noticed they were putting up I think it was like Oxy or something. I can't remember what the brand name is, but like pimple washes for kids' faces, because they're dealing with acne. And I'm like, okay, ads in the hallways, the bars, because if you don't have bars on the windows, then the metal detectors don't do any good because you can't control access. And then, a uniformed police officer, I was like, how could it get worse? Fast forward 30 years and wow, how could it get worse? How could it indeed has been getting worse. I guess Charlemagne is teasing us. He's all resentful because he wasn't properly invited. Now he's not coming in.
Oh, well, that's fine.
Charlemagne, can I beg you, man? I'm begging you. I'm on my knees saying, please Please, Charlemagne. There. That should work for his ego, hopefully.
But yeah, like Hato says in the chat, it's weaponized communication. But yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned that, Semi-Agog, because like where I went to high school in El Paso, so it's very odd because it's just like you had a totally different culture, a totally different group of people. And there were like fights all the time. Like there was uniformed officers there, but like all that they're going to do is just sort of watch over, what took place. And then just break it up afterwards.
Right, show up with a dustpan and like sweep it up afterwards. Yeah, it's all a horror show. I mean, that's probably the most terrifying thing about talking to younger people is just like, oh my God, what have you guys been forced to see? Like, what have you been told? What were your developing little brains, soaking in as you came up? So yeah, I guess there's no Charlemagne. He's like against all principles of good order. I mean, that's a proper reactionary response. So I guess I can't. No
worries then.
He's a prima donna. He's a bit of a princess. So what's next for your channel with the time we have left? What's coming up? You're saying that you're going to be doing some of the geopolitical analysis that I used to be into myself. Now I can't look at the news because it makes me want to vomit. Anything else?
Yeah. So that's the regular Sunday show that I do, which I enjoy doing because I don't always cover current events. Sometimes I will for. Depending on the severity or the massiveness of the topic. I've done that before, but it's also a way for people to learn about basic international relations theories and also get an understanding of like where I come from when I view things through geopolitics. I'm very much a structural realist, so I'm thinking about trying to invite Radalib on because he recently read John J. Mearsheimer's The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, and that's a really influential text. So it'll be fine. Hopefully I can get him on one of these days. I know he's incredibly busy, but along with that, I plan on having some more long form content out. And then I also want to do a little bit of like movie reviews, sort of like what Morgoth does. I've got a script written to review, the 1941 movie Sergeant York, which
nice.
Nice. I love that movie.
I just shoot them like turkeys.
Exactly. But I wanted to sort of just dive into sort of that. To me, because it came out before Pearl Harbor, and then when it came out, it became this very much a big, propaganda-like film because of what happened in Hawaii. But it wasn't originally meant to be a propagandistic film. And to me, I thought it was just really this unique identifier of the culture of that time, where Alvin York is torn between his newfound conversion to Christianity and then the desire to serve the country. And to me, that I think is worth talking about. So I have a script written on that. I'm working on that. I want to break into movie reviews. And then my books have just came in today from Amazon. I know I bought from Amazon and not my great right-wing publishers, but I bought Bertrand de Juvenel's On Power, and that'll be the next Prudent Reads. So that'll be fun. And that's always a book club, book review kind of stream. And then after that, I've got my Politics of Masculinity video I have planning on coming out. And then this other one that I've been working on since I started the channel way back in October of last year, which is sort of what does a reactionary foreign policy look like? And so that'll be fun because I'm not really sure what what that entirely looks like. I've been reading a lot of Yarvin's, his ideas of just various microstates and sort of the German Confederation. So I'm looking at a variety of things. And Raging Mandrill, I did use Amazon Smile, but I donated it to a local charity that's not too far from where I live that provides therapeutic horseback riding for special needs kids. So I did use Amazon Smile, so I feel a little less evil about it. But that's what I have going on for the channel-wise, so I'll be back to making regular content now that I'm getting settled in. They still don't want me driving for the next couple of weeks as I've recovered from the surgery. I have this giant, smiley-faced scar on my abdomen from where they took out the peritoneal dialysis catheter and then put in the kidney. So it's this weird emoji on my abdomen. It's kind of fun. But yeah, thankfully, though, my new job is giving me a laptop and having me work remote for the next couple of weeks until I'm given the green light to drive. I'm incredibly blessed. Words cannot begin to express just how grateful I am that the stars have aligned in the way that they did, just because I interviewed for this job like a week before they gave me the call, and I got it on the spot. And they offered me a good starting salary, and I couldn't say no because it's in my skill set area. I work in nonprofits and grant writing, and compliance and stuff like that. So they gave me the job. They gave me a good salary. I said yes. I put my notice in at work where I was currently working, and I was miserable there. And then I got the call, and then everything played out the way that it did. And you can go through my Twitter feed and my YouTube updates to let you all know how it went. And that's how it's been going. And my work was more than accommodating. They were like, yeah, we'll let you work from home until you can drive, and then you can just come to the office. And it still hasn't hit me yet, I guess, everything that's taken place and what's happened. I got asked that question about like, well, how do you feel? And I really don't know how to answer that. I'm grateful. I look at it all as if I'm now on borrowed time, because technically I am. And I want to make the most of that life and that time that I have left, which is roughly 10 to 15 years before you need to get another kidney. And I definitely want to make the most of it. It's just that when I got the call, it was about 45 minutes from where I was working to my house to grab my bag and my things to go to the hospital to. And that 45-minute drive was just me like crying and like hoping that it would work out, because this isn't the first time I've gotten the call about getting a kidney. And I just like recited the Lord's Prayer maybe like 150 times on my way to the house. And I got to the house and my dad was there, and we got in the car and we drove to the hospital. But it was just like, after that, completely just stoic. Just, I'm not feeling anything. I'm not going to respond or react to anything until I get the good news. And I didn't get the good news until like 10 o'clock at night saying, hey, the surgery's good to go. But even now, I'm like 3 weeks out, and I don't know really how I feel yet. Like the shock, I guess, of it all hasn't hit me. Like I'm in a routine. It's just like things are fine. I take my meds. I do what I need to do. I watch my diet. I've turned into an 85-year-old man. I pee on the hour every hour. It's ridiculous. But that's a good thing, because the nephrologist says that your new kidney doesn't know what to do. So it has to work overtime before it gets into a normal sort of setting. So I'm up in the middle of the night all the time. I feel like an old man, but I'm not going to complain, because that means things are working. But yeah, and the channel is going to be my sort of distraction, I think, from everything, from my, twice a week trips to the clinic to get labs drawn and to have the nephrologist tell me what things are going and what my meds are going to look like. But I'm really glad to be back. I really cannot begin to express my gratefulness to both, the people that I work with and the people I associate with online, because even though I don't know any of you guys personally, the fact that all of these prayers and amount of support, both from my subscribers, the followers, people I've interacted with in other streams, I am incredibly lucky, and I'm incredibly blessed to have this sort of weird internet, community background and support. So to chat and to you, Semyagog, as well, because I know that you had reached out even before all this about the whole steaming thing in the sauna. So thank you all. I'm incredibly grateful and blessed.
Well, certainly very happy to see that you jumped through this latest hoop of fire. If you bought yourself a decade, the advances that are happening, even as addlepated as a lot of the medical industry and establishment has become, they're still turning out real solutions for things. So, there's reason to hope that there will be further improvements. And I damn sure would, what's the old saying, I'd rather have a kidney and not need it than need a kidney and not have it, So that's a very, very good thing indeed. And we're all, the Twitter side of things, we're all certainly very happy to see you back, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back as well. But no, and you're true about the advances. Like I was reading up on, there's currently in trials right now a mechanical kidney that doesn't require immunosuppressants to work. And so they're waiting on FDA approval for human trials. So I'm really excited about that. I know that'll be out and available in the next 10 to 15 years. So I'm hoping by the time I need a new one that I can get something that'll be a little less stressful on the body.
Yeah, and just the psychology of it. I mean, I hadn't thought about it, but when you're explaining, to be sort of keyed up and ready for a solution to happen after a long wait, where it's literally life or death, and then you're like, well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. Let's just tease you about it, and let's just have you, rush over here, turning on a dime, and then wait to find out whether or not it's going to happen. I mean, it's yeah.
It happened at the end of February the first time, and I have a video on my channel called "Don't Be Discouraged" where I talk about that one in detail. If anyone's interested, they can go find that one. It's one of my Monday morning musings videos. It's an unscripted rant. But no, it was just like, I was upset for like 5 seconds when they told me, "Hey, it's not going to happen." Like they weren't viable due to some issues in transport. And I was like upset for. Hold on a second. There we go. But no, I was upset for like 5 seconds, and then I was like, "Okay, I've been here for like a day now. I haven't eaten or drinking anything because it's a surgery. They want you to fast." And I was like, "Okay, I'm done. Like, let's just go home." And that was it. Like, it didn't really hit me in any sort of major way because it's just like, well, I have my like dialysis. I do it at home. Things have been fine. I'm in and then the funny thing is I have no other health problems. Like, I have no allergies. I've got nothing. This is it. So I consider myself lucky. But yeah, there is the psychological component, and maybe it's the fact that I haven't, I guess, let my guard down enough. Like, even when this all started a year ago, literally a year ago, when I first went to dialysis and everything, and it was hemodialysis, is like, even then I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. All I got to do is follow this diet, go to treatment 3 times a day. Life will be normal, and so eventually I'm beginning to think that a year of baggage is just going to start seeping out when the dam breaks. But I think I'll be prepared when that time comes.
Well, I certainly hope so. And it's good news all around at this point, body not rejecting it and stuff. So that's all excellent news. And I will be looking forward to your content coming up. I myself have got to boogie now. I know that you wanted to communicate directly with your chat, and I myself ran upstairs momentarily. And while I was there in the kitchen, I swatted a mosquito that was buzzing around. I have real issues with mosquitoes. I won't go off on a 20-minute rant about it, but the minute that my hand slapped down against the cabinet door, squashing the mosquito, the fluorescent light over my sink just plummeted directly out of the socket and shattered into like I don't know, 10,000 pieces. So I have got to go and sweep and vacuum thousands of little minuscule pieces of fluorescent light bulb out of my sink and countertops and kitchen and yeah. So.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on and staying for the whole time, Semiagog. I greatly appreciate it. I know this is the first time that we've been on stream together, besides unpopular opinions, but no, I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody who follows my channel came through, or if there's some new viewer who doesn't know it already, Prudentialist has some great content. Please subscribe to the channel. And yes, sir, Godspeed to you. And I'll talk at you soon.
All right. See you, man. Take care. All right, guys. So I'll catch up with all of you. I've been noticing your kind words in the chat, and I have not ignored them. I do want to appreciate it. Thank you all. The fact that you guys both on Twitter and on YouTube have been incredibly kind with your words. I have been blessed, and I'm thankful for it. Especially for those of you who have tipped on Subscribestar or donated or became a patron of sorts. Like I've said in the past, all of that money goes to my my healthcare. So like, you guys are helping me pay my medical bills. You guys are helping me pay the pharmacy bill. The fact that over the course of the time I was in the hospital, I managed to procure over like $100. That $100 went straight to the pharmacy at Walgreens inside the hospital, because I paid like $100-something for all of my like anti-rejection medication, my blood pressure medication, and all that jazz. So I am very blessed, and I'm very thankful that you guys you like the content enough to support it, and all that support goes straight into keeping me healthy and to keeping me alive. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm very thankful to all of you. Tronholm, I am doing well, and thank you very much for the blessings. I appreciate it. With that being said, there were a couple of super chats at the beginning, so I want to read those, and then we'll get started with just interacting with you all for the next couple of minutes. Doomgoy sent $2 on June 26th when I set up the stream. He said, "Welcome back, dude. You've been missed." Well, thank you. And then today he had sent one saying, "Glad to have you back. Hello to Patriarch as well." And I know that Mr. Patriarch said hello. Bolero sent $9.99 saying, "Welcome back, Prudentialist. Don't let these guys crowd you out on your own glorious return stream." No, I wanted them on there. I wanted to just have a conversation, have it free flowing. And like I had said, that I would be interacting with you guys at the end anyway. So here we are. Thank you all for the super chats. I greatly appreciate it. But yeah, so what I have planned for you all in the future is that next Sunday we'll be returning to the Sunday stream. I'm going to pick a topic. We're going to have a PowerPoint presentation. Things are going to look great. And so we're going to be, I was just breaking balls. Oh, don't worry about it, Valero. You never, that's the thing with like tone, with text, right? Is that you can never infer tone. So no worries, man. You're good. I appreciate it nonetheless. But yeah, we're going to be back to PowerPoint presentations. If you guys want to go over something more recent or interesting, I'll put up a poll on the YouTube channel in the little community tabs, and then we can talk about, either like recent things, so sort of like rank punditry, theory, or maybe some like historical international relations things to study. I'll put that up there for you guys. It's no big deal. And other than that, I have some scripted stuff in the works. Hopefully sometime, I think by Friday, I'm going to have the American Gulag / streaming services video out there. And then after that, it'll be a long form video, I think, on the politics of masculinity. I've been working on that one for a while. I'm still getting into the swing of things. I'm still trying to get back into it, but I'm happy to be writing again. I'm really glad about that. I'm looking forward to the fact that things are moving in the direction that we want them to. So like I said earlier, like the fact that the channel is sort of this distraction from everything else that's going on, I'm incredibly happy to do it. But how have you guys been? I know I've been away for a while for obvious reasons. So how are all of you? How have you all been? I know that quite a few of you guys are regulars, like Tuesday and Bolero, and Not Sure. So, I mean, just how are things going? How have you been? Bolero says you're good. Tronholm asks, Prudentialist, do you ever go to church? I do. I can't right now just because they don't want me to drive or anything like that. But I do. I've been, when this all started a year ago, I'd sort of decided to myself, I need to get back in touch with my creator and get good with him just in case. I do go. I recently I've been going to like 3 different churches, sort of getting a feel for everything as I try to find what kind of version of Christianity I want to be interested in. So I've gone to a Baptist service, I've gone to a chartered Eastern Orthodox church, and I've gone to a local Catholic church in town. So I have a lot of appreciation for Catholicism. I don't know if all of the doctrine is for me. I'm still figuring things out. I was raised in a sort of Baptist, sort of Protestant household. I definitely like the community that's there in that church. And at the same time, I also really like the divine liturgy of Eastern Orthodox Church. So I'm torn between these 3 because, there's some familiarity, there's doctrine, and then there's something that I really appreciate about the Eastern Orthodox Church. I can't put my word on it. There's just something that moves me. But I do go to church, to answer your question. Tuesday says, I sincerely pray the DC perspective doesn't become a broken man that many of us are by the time we're 25. I hope not. I have a lot of hope for the energy that right-wing Zoomers have. I hope that it's okay. Hector says he got stuck with jury duty this week. It sucks. Well, if you end up going through it and they pick you for and they go through voir dire, or however you want to pronounce it. In Texas, they call it voir dire, but I know it's voir dire. When you get to that point, Hector, just raise your hand and say that you need to hear the defendant or the respondent testify in order to make an accurate decision. They'll immediately strike you from the list for constitutional issues, and then you'll just get out of there. It's a quick way to be dismissed from jury duty. So as long as you can raise some sort of constitutional issue, you'll be fine. If you can find an Orthodox Catholic parish, stick with them. As a Roman Catholic, if you want to become Catholic, be prepared to hear the same vapid homily every Sunday for the rest of your life. So I've been told. The liturgy is important as doctrine. You cannot discount aesthetics in religion. I wholeheartedly agree, certain event. I believe you. I did not get a chance to go to an Orthodox service, though, this last Easter. I was under the weather. I had to be with the doctor. All right, Bolero, you take care. I'm glad to be back, and I'll be back with more content pretty soon, guys. Let's see here. Tronholm says, yes, I'm searching for a Christian place to settle myself. I'm Lutheran. Yeah, good for you. I mean, I have no issue about the various denominations of the Christian faith. I think at the end of the day, we are all brothers in Christ, and I think that's what's important, regardless of how we praise him. The only issue I do kind of slightly have is with Mormonism, because I think that's Christian fan fiction. Ugh. But yeah, I mean, things are going well in the right direction, and I'm glad that we're all there. Hey, Chris, glad to see that you're in chat. I know that you're pretty active on Twitter. Good to see you. But yeah, things are moving right along, and I'm quite happy about it. I'm moving around more. I don't need to wear a brace. Mormons are not Christians. Yes, Charlemagne, I wholeheartedly agree. They're Christian fan fiction at best. That's what I describe them as. They're Christian fan fiction that don't drink coffee, and they're teetotalers. I think that they're weird. Yeah. Well, with that being said, guys, so stay tuned. I'm going to have a new video out hopefully by Friday or Saturday. And then I will be up on the Sunday stream. So pretty soon I'm going to have a poll up on here. So to see what you guys want to cover, whether that's theory, whether that's rank punditry, or, you know, something more historical. I'm going to put that poll up. The Prudentialists, what made you reconsider baptism? Was it their perspective of salvation or something else? To me, I think it was more of a nostalgic familiarity thing. So anytime that we were back in the States from living overseas, it was always the Baptist churches where I live around here now. And so there's the sense of community and sense of, you know, belonging that I think I appreciate about the Baptist churches in these areas. Not so much their perspective on salvation, but there's a communitarian aspect to it that I appreciate. But yeah, let's see. Wacky Blarg says the Prudentialist and Charlemagne, all's good. Cool to see my two faves here, Prudentialist and Charlemagne. You guys rock. Well, thank you. Yeah, Charlemagne was a huge influence before I made the channel, because I would go through all of his videos on like mold bug and the genealogy of liberalism. And, you know, after years of consuming political content through college, I was like, you know what, let's give it a shot. Let's start making our own things, because Charlemagne and the Distributists definitely helped me open my eyes to sort of more of the neo-reactionary perspective. So yeah, Charlemagne and Dave are awesome. Hector says rank punditry is dank punditry. It can be, depending on what you're talking about. But with all that being said, guys, I'm going to turn in now. I've got some things I need to do, and I desperately need to use the restroom. So with that being said, be prudent, everybody. Take care, and I love you, and I'll see you all next Sunday. Bye, guys.